I agree with you there. I think that that's, like I said, in Houston, and this is something that was borrowed from the early days of the new movement for sure, there's that introductory improv class that happens before the biggest show, and that gives a big portion of your new audience an opportunity to try their hand at what they're then going to watch some of the most experienced people in the theater do. And that does create that circuit, like you just said, where the people watching have just had the direct experience of learning the very beginning of what they're about to see. And that does create a nice effect. What you said about the magic of it kind of reminds me of something that I saw Yoko Ono explain one time to a big group of people. She was doing a show. Do they call it a show if you're a performance artist? I mean, I know they don't.
Yes.
Yeah,
anyway,
sure they do.
A show.
No, it's
you know.
Yeah. It's still it's putting up a show the same way it's putting up a show if you're an artist.
Like
You know,
a visual artist.
yeah.
Like when you put up paintings, it's a show.
Because I'm a performance artist. Like my
Cool.
stuff is much more performance art than anything else because it's improv on stage.
Yeah, in
so.
New York, when I did a lot of that kind of stuff, they called it show. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah.
Proper nomenclature.
There we go. So at her show,
You're going.
we were all gathered, and she was explaining this concept that we try to introduce improv audiences to when we introduce the show, or that I've seen Eric say at weddings, this idea that one of the things that's special about what we are doing in this event, in this celebration, is that everyone in this room is gathered together for the one time that they'll probably ever be gathered together. And that makes this moment unique.
Yep.
But the way that she communicated this idea is that she had this giant 4-foot-high vase. She broke it with a hammer and then said, everybody come get a shard of this vase, and then at some point in the future, maybe 10 years from now, we'll all come back together and put the vase back together. And obviously, the art part of that is the knowledge that you have that that's not going to happen, that we'll never put the vase back together. So there's something beautiful and broken about every moment where it's just you and I having this conversation that never occurs again, that it's real and that it's never to be repeated. And I think that that's one of the things that you do want an improv audience to really get, that it's not just a hipster moment with them and their beer that they brought in, sitting down, and, you know, maybe these clowns on stage will try hard enough to make them laugh, and they can compare it to what they saw on SNL and, you know, say that somebody reminded them of A.D. Bryant, and then that's the end of the conversation. But instead that they're participating in an experience that is special and ephemeral and in a literal way, once in a lifetime.
Yep.
You do want people to get that, but, you know, I want people to get that about life all the time, and you can't always get people to get that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you brought up your husband and being a minister, and, you know, that it's absolutely, and just like you said with Yoko Ono, even if people did come back 10 years from then, people will have died, people will have moved away, things like that. So you may come close to completing that vase, but really all it is a visage of what was there. You're never going to actually complete that again. And that's never going to actually exist again. And in the church, it's called full active conscious participation. There are the people that are just sitting there and occupying space, and God bless them, they're called to be at church, and that's a great thing. And then there are the people that are fully, actively, consciously participating and experiencing that. And it does take that mindset of, I'm walking in to experience something tonight. And it's the same thing as the person that's sitting at the bar that just came in to have some drinks and hear a band in the background, and the person that came to see a show.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got both of them occupying the same space. You know, there's a bunch of people that are just transients that are there drinking, and there's music going on in the background, and a bunch of people that are there to see the show. And the question is really for the performer, for the one up there, you have to be in it for all of them. You have to understand the concept, because it's hard. And I mean, I can tell you even from your husband's point of view, being involved with the church as long as I was, being an altar server, going to the seminary, things like that. It can be rough being up there. It can be hard being up there and trying to convey that message. Same thing as you guys on stage, trying to convey this message when sometimes you see that the light bulb's kind of dim up there. It's there, but it's kind of dim right now. I'm glad that there's a light bulb at least. You know, and it's hard. Yeah. It's hard, but you've still got to put it out there, and you've still got to try and engage those people. And that's what gets tough. That's what, as a performer, is hard, and you really do have to be that centered Zen ninja, to be able to understand the fact that it's all your fully active conscious participation that matters. And I've heard Amy say it numerous times whenever she teaches her classes, that, you know, they're not always going to laugh. The question is, do you know that you pulled it off right? Do you know, I mean, she was just dealing with somebody in her show the other day that was did a performance piece and was really, really self-conscious about it. And she was like, but you killed it. You killed it. Why are you so self-conscious about it? Like, you know, he was the one that it didn't even translate to, you know? And that's funny to me, but that happens as a performer. And you get up there sometimes and you do something and you're like, I don't even know like what that just was. It happened and it exists, but you know, wow.
You know, I have a mixed relationship with the audience. You know, like I appreciate our conversation, and I'm committed. And when I return to the stage in another way after this conversation, I do definitely want to like open myself to sharing a bit more of the magic with the audience. But oftentimes for me, because this is my life, because this is the choice that I've made to make this all that I do, it's for me, I think of it like, well, I'm an artist and I want to put this art out there, and if they react to it the way that I expect that they're going to, great. But if they don't, that's their prerogative, and there's nothing I can do about that. I mean, I can adjust stuff, but in the interest of, especially with improv, where it's like, well, that's it. That's the only time that's going to happen. If you liked it, you liked it. If you didn't, you didn't. Yeah. But I also do a sketch show, and sometimes we get two shows, and so sometimes the audience reaction is like crazily different. One audience is like, oh, that was the best thing I've ever seen. And then the next show we do, which is exactly the same, they are like, yeah, I didn't like that. And you're like, crickets. I don't understand how that works out. And sometimes I'm like, forget what the audience is saying. Like, as an artist, you did a good thing. And I wonder, I don't know, because Shyla, I know this is your life as well. You know, this is your full life as an artist. How does that make you feel, or what is your point of view as far as like I'm performing this, so that's good in and of itself, versus I have to appease the audience sort of? What do you think about that?
I have always had great difficulty taking the idea of the audience seriously. I'll just be honest about that. In that, the idea that the show exists for them has never been persuasive to me. Yeah. I feel like they are invited guests that are allowed to partake in something, but Same. That it's not actually for them in any meaningful way. And I have to fight that sometimes because I can go too far that direction. I have to remind myself that we did invite them.
Yeah, they are guests.
Right, yes. They, if they're not there, then we are, like the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, like the player says, we are just doing something perverted in the dark. If there's no audience, it is a necessary part of what we do. But I think that some of my willingness to see whatever I'm doing as first something that's happening inside and between me and my collaborator, and secondarily as existing for the eyes of any sort of audience or imaginary critic, comes from growing up doing street theater at a Renaissance festival. In that's a totally different scene than anything else. Most of the people who come to the Renaissance Festival, they bought a ticket to get into something that is performance heavy, but they don't really, most of them, want any performance to happen around them.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of art patrons. You're bothering most people. The concept that people don't get it is off the charts.
Oh, yeah.
In one hand, you get people there who are like, well, I've seen Shakespeare in the park, and these broad vaudevillians are offending my sensibilities.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, you get people who are like, I'm here to drink and watch somebody hit somebody on a stick with a horse, and I don't know why you're up in my business.
Yeah.
And
your bodice sitting overflowing, get out of here.
Exactly, right? Like, there's a very small portion of people who are like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
You're an artist, and this is a kind of, you're very aware of the entire lineage that goes back through commedia, and you're actually a very well-trained thespian. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, there's not a lot of those out there. And I was, one of my early people who trained me had a degree in theater from Harvard. But what he was doing with his life was training people to perform at Renaissance festivals. And I think there's a lot of integrity in that, but that necessarily means that you have to have a different view of the audience, a view that says, you and they may not be on the same team, but you still have to kind of take care of them, and you still have to be there for them, and you also have to know that what you're doing may just be something that you understand. They may not understand it, beyond possibly you're able to give them some joy, Yeah. And so that's kind of how I approach those things. Broader, as a human being, I have to admit, I have never felt like I could expect most people, even most people I like, to understand me or get it. And I know that some artistic people feel that way, and other artistic people feel like, if I just find the right people, they'll get it. And I think that, personally, for me, the right people is probably a very, very small subset of human beings. So in order to keep enjoying the world, that has to mean that I jettison a lot of the desire to be understood and instead embrace the idea that we can enjoy each other without perfect understanding, and that you can care for others and try to help make their experience of you pleasurable without expecting them to, like, get it or celebrate it the way that you might like to have it understood or enjoyed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Earlier you mentioned this idea of bravery, and it made me think, and what you're saying right now makes me think of this same idea. Right now in the world, with both with the internet and politics and stuff, there's a certain fear out there to be seen as different, to have an opinion that is